7.
The Money Show. Personal finance.
Debt. It's a 4-letter word, and it riles you, I think, Warren Ingram, more than any other 4-letter word known to humankind.
I have to think about that. I think you're right. Yeah. Riles me, yes. Beer doesn't rile me. You're right.
No. Beer's a good word. Beer's 4 letters. That's a good word. What other 4-letter words do you know?
No, I can't. I'm going to get myself into trouble here.
Anyway, no, but debt is a scary thing. South Africans are highly indebted. There's good debt and bad debt. Let's just do that little one quickly.
So to me, there are actually 3 kinds of debt. So to start with the bad debt. Bad debt is typically debt that we use to buy things that will immediately either lose all their value or lose most of their value. And so, for example, buying debt or using debt to buy things like clothes, to buy furniture, appliances, holidays. Just almost general consumption, but you do it on debt. That's bad debt, and I don't think there's ever a really good reason to use debt to buy any of those things. In around furniture, etc. Rather save and build up the cash to buy those items. Then if we go to vehicles, for example, vehicles could be considered bad debt. For example, typically in the South African context, we love to buy overpriced cars. If you look at our roads, our roads are filled with some really expensive cars. Did you see the tweet from somebody who said this week, I was planning to buy a Golf GTI, and then I listened to Warren Ingram on the Money Show, and I bought a Vivo. I loved it. That was
just like VW South Africa is going to hate Warren Ingram, but you're very proud of yourself.
Well, they still bought VW, so I hope not.
This is true.
But I am. I would have been extremely proud if he'd said I'm buying a 5-year-old VW. But anyway, we'll take what victories we can get here.
And the point is, it's having an impact. So sorry, back to cars. But that was a pivotal moment for me. I like that.
And to use that example, so what you might find there is that suddenly that car buyer has gone from buying a car with I would say bad debt because simply the car was just too expensive, to possibly neutral debt because they're buying an asset that they need to get them around, to get them to work, to make them productive, and it doesn't set them back too heavily from a financial point of view. So that's where neutral debt can come in. And then to me, good debt would be when you incur debt to buy an asset that should appreciate in value over time. For most of us, that's going to be our home, and it might be a second property, or it might be a business, etc. So it's typically buying assets that are either going to give you capital growth, income, or a combination of the two.
What about taking on debt to buy education? Because that is, depending on the education you buy, of course, and if it enhances your earning capability, then surely that's good debt.
I think it's going to straddle between neutral and good debt. So what we find, and I think it's it's obviously a very hot topic in South Africa. So maybe to look at a slightly neutral example, in the States, where we're finding lots and lots of graduates who've got themselves major student loans, not doing anything irresponsible. It's part of their social contract, I guess. You go to school, go to university, get a degree, and if it means you got to borrow money, that's fine, because you're going to get a job, and if you work hard, you'll make it in life. And what they're finding is they're leaving university and not getting a job. And now they've got major debt. And so in a situation like that, the fact that they are educated doesn't help them at all. And I suspect that sort of social contract might well apply in South Africa as well to a good portion of our university-going population. So I think it's true to say that education is great in terms of being able to further your career, etc. But I think it's the appropriate education at the appropriate time. So maybe just to use an example, someone who is working and who is productive and then starts to study part-time, to me, taking on some debt then to fund your part-time education, that makes all the sense in the world, because you've already got employment, and the likelihood is that it will help you further yourself in your employment already.
All right. Now, a lot of South Africans have got multiple debts. So let us. Have you done some calculations? Have you Have you got a scenario you want to use, or can I just invent one?
You can invent one, please.
Okay, all right. So you got a mortgage. Let's say there's a R1 million mortgage. That's a good mortgage. There's 250,000 rand in vehicle debt. That's a nice car. There is credit card debt of 100,000 rand. Then there is a short-term loan of 50,000 rand, and that's with a microlender, and so that's drawing interest of 27% a year. The credit card debt is being rolled over, so it's drawing interest of like 20% a year. The car, what's car loan? 10%.
It's usually prime plus 2 now.
Is that what it is? Okay, so that's what's that? Say 12 and 10% on the million rand, and then you also took out a payday loan because you were short of cash one day, and you've rolled that over a few times, and you're paying 1,000,000% on that. But you get the picture. There are 4 different bundles of debt here, and unfortunately, you've also suddenly had a car accident, and you'd forgotten to insure the car. Because you changed brokers and you got let down, but your car's uninsured. So now you're in a spot of bother because you've just lost your job, and you've got a job that pays you 20% less than your last job, and now you've got more debt than you know what to do with.
Gee.
Help.
Thanks, Bruce. Just go with an easy example, why don't you?
You said great.
Good man. Okay, so let's talk through the kinds of debt first and how you would approach those. The first thing to understand is there is nothing in the world from an investment point of view that grows at 27% a year on a consistent basis. You might be extremely lucky and buy a share that does that for 1, 2, or 3 years, but you're relying now on luck, and that's never been a strategy. So if you look at this position where you're paying interest rates from 10% to 27%, what you need to understand is that 27% is going to send you down a long and slippery slope from which you'll probably never recover unless you address that first. And so for me, whenever I meet someone and they've got this type of a mix of debts, I always say to them, let's just start by understanding what your most expensive debt is. And for most people, they would say to me, that's going to be the mortgage, because that's probably the biggest payment that they make on a monthly basis. Yeah. And that's not true. The most expensive debt is the one that costs you the highest rate of interest on any basis. So in this instance, using your example here, that's the one that costs you 27%, even though it's only on an amount of 50,000 rand. So that's the one that we really have to address first. We can't, there's no point in for example, now trying to borrow additional money and look at investing it somewhere to try and get yourself out of this hole. You need to look at what assets you have and what debt you have now, and figure out a way to address this problem. And if I look at this, you've now got 250,000 rands worth of vehicle debt, but no vehicle, and you need to get to work. So that's an issue that we have to resolve probably as a matter of urgency, because otherwise, even though the job pays you 20% less, if you can't get to work, you just don't have a job. And so to me, in a situation like this, I'm probably starting to look at what is the value of my house, and what can I afford to pay. So what's important to understand here is, the fact that your mortgage is R1 million. Let's just to enhance your scenario slightly, Bruce, let's say the value of your house is R2 million.
Okay.
Your temptation might be to say, okay, so let me go to the bank and ask them to lend me a bit of money against the value of my house, and I'll pay off that microlender and get myself some kind of a car just to get myself going, and then I'll pay off the rest of the money as I go. The issue you've got now is in the old days, banks would look at the value of the asset and then make that decision to lend you money or not. Nowadays, they do look at the value of the asset, but that's not the determining factor when they're going to decide to give you money. What they're going to look at is how much are you earning on a monthly basis, what are your expenses on a monthly basis, and then what have you got left over, if anything. And if you have got enough left over that they know that you can afford to pay the additional debt that you want to incur, for example, in this case, on your house, then they will lend you the money. the fact is then they've got a house to secure the debt, and they know you've got the cash flow to pay for it. Because what the bank doesn't want to do is suddenly become the biggest homeowner.
Fair enough. I mean, they don't want to have properties in possession, or the PIPs as they call them. But what a bank might suggest to you to do is, look, you're in trouble here. Why don't you consolidate your debt? Why don't you take your mortgage debt and you take your car debt and you take this microloan and you take the credit card debt and you put it all into one facility? We'll charge you an interest rate that is lower than the highest level of debt that you've got. It'll bring down your average monthly repayment from, instead of paying, 20,000 Rand a month to service your debts, you're now paying 17,500 Rand. I'm picking numbers randomly. And that suddenly seems very attractive, this thing of debt consolidation.
It can be in, let's say, 2 situations out of 10, 2 cases out of 10. It can be a way for someone who is genuinely, good with money and happens to have had, 4 or 5 instances of bad luck all arriving at the same time. It can be a way out for someone like that to dig themselves out of a hole that's partly of their making and partly of circumstance. However, for the very vast majority of people, all that's going to do is become an enabler, because they got themselves into a debt problem in the first place because they didn't control their spending, and they didn't control their almost addiction to debt. And so what we do now is, using your example, they've suddenly got themselves an extra 2,500 Rand a month, and most likely they're going to spend that on consumables. So what they've done now is taken this debt, and yes, your interest rate might be better than your worst rate that you were paying, but you're going to be paying this over a longer period of time, firstly, and typically these things are 5-year contracts. So, let's just say your credit card debt you might have, tried to pay off over 3 or 4 or 5 months, or, up to 6 months. Suddenly you're paying that off over 5 years. And so, even if your interest rate is a bit lower than what you would have paid on the credit card, multiply that effect by 5 years, and suddenly you've got this really deep hole that you've dug for yourself, that's just not going to get resolved for you.
I've got a call this evening from Jan Mohanwa, who is the Chief Executive of Customer Solutions at Absa Retail and Business Banking. I mean, the banking sector, Jan, thanks for the call, has been a big seller of debt consolidation. Are you still in that mode where you guys are doing debt consolidation? Is that still, because you make a lot of money out of it, is it still in the best interest of your customers?
Thanks for the time, Bruce. I almost got depressed listening to your example of a stressed-out customer.
They're true scenarios, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a type of scenario you would have wanted to hear on a Thursday evening, but unfortunately, that's true for a lot of our customers. And just on that consolidation, it used to be very popular, and I agree with the sentiments that have been shared. 2 out of 10 customers, it might just be the right solution for them. The key thing there is the client needs to have a clear plan of getting out of debt. So it's a short-term solution, but 8 out of 10 times, the customer who opted for debt consolidation, unfortunately, went back into that, typically go back into a debt situation, down the line.
Okay, so what are the alternatives then, Jan? I mean, this particular individual's income level has fallen, their debt level is rising because they're struggling to keep up with the interest payments. You're saying don't do debt consolidation. What else should they be doing?
They can do it, Bruce. What I'm saying is the key condition there is you must have a long-term plan to not get into the same situation again. Otherwise, you're just moving your problem forward. There are a number of options. Of course, the best option is to try to pay as the ideas have been shared, your most expensive debt first. But most of the clients understand that they just don't have the money to do that. What we do at Absa now, we've introduced something called balance transfer, and effectively what it does is we find a cheaper way of financing your current debt. So we know you can pay it off, but we think it's a bad idea to pay 27%, and maybe we can give you an option at a lower rate. But the key thing there is we have to ensure that you have settled the
Okay.
27% debt in this example.
Yamohanwa, thanks very much for your call this evening. Chief Executive of Customer Solutions at Absa Retail and Business Banking. And when a banker tells you debt consolidation is dangerous, it's not, well, not dangerous, but it's not for everybody. It's for a minority of cases, Warren. You've got to pay attention to it.
Absolutely, and I'm impressed that my 2 out of 10 number was agreed with there. That's great. You know, I
There we go.
I should suck these things out of my thumbs more often.
I've got a red rag to a bull moment. David in Centurion. I'm sorry, David. We took a while to get you. David had a question. He says, an investment, a timepiece, a watch, like an investment watch, is that good debt because it may appreciate? That's David's question in Centurion. I mean, where does that... It's like buying a piece of art and hoping the artist remains trendy and in demand. You might buy a classic Cartier watch or a classic Rolex in the hope that this thing is going to keep growing in value. Or what is the unpronounceable ones that Richemont makes? You think just...
Audemars Piaget or something, yeah. So,
sorry, I'm not in that market. You would know better than me. But
yeah, I'm just going to move on from there
quickly.
So I think the word that's key in that whole thing was that you hope it goes up. Yeah. And that's the issue. To me, you know, a piece of art or an antique or a jewelry piece, you need to have a really good understanding of your market before you dabble in that. And I think more to the point, do it with cash that you can afford to leave sunken into that asset for time, just in case your forecast is wrong. And I think the difference between, for example, borrowing money to buy shares or borrowing money to buy a listed property or something like that, or even to buy a normal house that you then rent out, is all of those assets will and should pay an income stream to you on a monthly or semi-annual basis or something that you can use to control your debt costs. So you can generate an income while you're waiting for that asset to appreciate in price. There is absolutely no income, well, unless you rent the watch out. There's no income from that, and there's no income from the art. And so to me, that's money that you use with real discretionary cash. In other words, money that you say, 10, 20 years, I don't need it, cool, I'll buy something, but I would do major research first.
Absolutely. I mean, people think Persian carpets are investments, and there's a small class of Persian carpet that might be investment grade. There's a small class of watch that is investment grade. There's a small class of artwork that is investment grade. There's a small class of wine that is investment grade. Going to buy 5 cases of Tussies because you think once it gets older people will pay more for it, that's not an investment.
No.
And you shouldn't even be drinking it. But that's another argument altogether. One last question, because we are out of time. Let's take Anton in Plumstead's question this evening. Hello, Anton.
Hi there. Quick one. Moving rental property debt, where I'm earning an income, over to my primary home loan debt, which is at a lower rate. And with the difference then, buying additional property to offset the tax. Is that a good idea or not really?
No, thank you, Anton, very much. I think a lot of people have built property empires and debt burdens, Warren Ingram, in this way. And I know that you're quite averse to property debt, but a lot of people do this kind of thing.
Yep. And lots of, there are people that have made, very good fortunes over time doing that. They've turned it into a business. So to use Anton's example, the first thing is just to understand that when you move the debt from your rental property to your primary residence, you can no longer write off the interest that you were paying on the rental property against the rent that you were earning. So one of your very few tax breaks that you get on that rental property will be the interest on the mortgage. And you don't get a tax break on paying off your own mortgage on your own house. That's not an income generating asset for you. So I think I'm always reluctant to pay off a rental property, and then continue to pay off my home loan, because I've just lost a very significant tax advantage, which is over time can be a huge contributor to your growth rate of your overall property portfolio. So to me, that's one I would be cautious of doing. What I'd probably end up doing is rather get that debt down on those rental properties first before you then buy your next one. So just a little bit of patience, I guess, and then go. And I would try and make sure in that instance that my home loan on my own property is paid off write down. So that's just not an issue you have to worry about, because if the market turns against you and you end up losing a property or two, the last one you really want to lose is your own home.
Thank you, Warren Ingram, very much indeed from Galileo Capital. He's a financial advisor. Your call